Hey, Gal, how are you doing, man?
Hello. I'm doing very, very well. Thank you. Thank you. How are you doing, Emil?
I'm good. I'm good. In this video, we're going to discuss or kind of having a behind the scene review of what we managed to do in terms of supporting a few additional SDKs officially. So before we kind of dive into that, can you please share slightly about yourself and your
Yes.
background?
So I'll share with everyone. That's the sixth time we're trying to record it. If it sounds funny, that's the reason. I'm Gal. I'm 38. I'm roughly in the profession for 8 years. And my biggest passion are automation and contract management. I've been doing it for a while now, starting with the most basic open API generators. And I think the peak of my career is what we did here in Novu, attempting to really provide SDK as the product or as a complementary part of the product. So that's what I'm doing here. That's me. I'm
Awesome.
purely a Java developer. I started, and I've been doing for the last 3 years TypeScript.
So let's start first. When you joined Novu, what was the actual state of the SDKs that we had back then?
So it's really funny because almost in every company I'm joining, the state of development is the following: there is some controllers, and then they discover they need some kind of SDK and documentation, and someone is manually keeping it, and then they're manually keeping documentation, and then they want a website with information, so they manually keep an open API. And that was pretty much the state of Novo. It all looked really fancy on the outside, but there were like multiple people working on keeping it alive. There were multiple community-driven SDKs. We had an NestJS with some decorators and an open API with documentation that was really well maintained for the few very important endpoints.
How many public endpoints were there when you just started
So
to
it,
dig into
it
that?
it it was a little bit of a mess. Like I think everything, the word public versus internal was really randomized.
Mm-hmm.
Searching, we had around I think close to 100, which was
Mm-hmm.
very clear that we don't need 100 points of interaction with the system. And then we started cleanup.
Mm-hmm.
We started understanding what's internal, what's external, what do we need to have as public endpoints, what is
Mm-hmm.
not. I'll give you an example, but like if we have something that is for our UI, which is like bearer-based authentication, you don't want it on a public endpoint because you don't give the public access.
Mm-hmm.
You want the public SDK, and by the way, OpenAPI should have what is normally accessible, like with an API key and so forth, what we give away.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically that. And one or two were maintained by us, and the rest were maintained by the community of the
So
SDKs.
basically, what you're saying in terms of the available endpoints were just too broad and too expanded, and just
And
included a lot of stuff that just did not need to have a public access.
I won't go with the word two. There was a lot. Okay, we decided. So when I joined, Nova knew that like Shark Tank, something needed to happen. Like there must be a better way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we start, but it was just all over the place when it comes to our open API.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started digging in. Okay, why those are duplicated? Why those are this? Also, it's an open source project. A lot of the REST endpoints were contributed by the community. There wasn't always like a strong design process behind them. So when I joined the concept, I came, by the way, I am like a very student lean approach to programming. I do stuff without money. So I was about to pull up some open source generator and generate our SDK. And
Mm-hmm.
Dima, our CTO, stopped me and said, we decided we do not make, we buy. Which
Mm-hmm.
was a very, very good idea, which really opened a little bit, because you can do an okay SDK to the language you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all.
Yeah.
You cannot even make an okay SDK for a language you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an important understanding. or like important humility recollection. Like you cannot make an SDK which is even half decent to something you don't know. And we wanted to go like Stripe level SDKs to all the languages possible.
But by the
So
way,
for
you know
that,
what? I do want to like jump in and understand what is the standard you kind of hold Novu up to, or wanted us to be compared to, or maybe the team. Like, what was
I'll explain.
the North Star?
So I'll explain. The North Star, when it comes to SDKs, usually referred to Stripe. They did a remarkable job, and actually, companies doing SDKs came out of Stripe. Ex-Stripes engineers start making Stripe SDKs to other companies. Stainless came out of Stripe, if I'm not mistaken. Fern even, if I think. But they are the really gold standard to how it should be done. Retries, idempotency keys, multiple layers, like subscribers, preferences, something, like really clear SDKs with short naming, and our North Star was a very, very good UX. Okay, to be as comfortable as possible for developers to use, and really the highest end possible when it comes to how is it used. And when it comes to what's important to me is also for this to be completely effortless for our developers. Like our developers need to handle business logic, and all the rest is magic.
Yeah.
To the point that it's working in all the languages. It's called, like, the concept is to do an idiomatic SDK, like an SDK that stands the best practices for each specific language. And it's obviously something I cannot do.
And like, obviously, like for a company to have it built in-house or maintained in-house requires to have a high competency of in each language.
You know, you need a person that is high. No company has it, because a company works with 1 or 2 languages, not with 6, no matter which one.
Right.
No company choose 6 backend languages or 6 like it doesn't happen. So it came out like it feels like in the last 4 years. And I think before it was more on the like open source generators. And after Stripe set the standard, a lot of companies and a lot of dev tools started looking into like providing SDK as a part of the product, and came out multiple competitors. I evaluated 4 when we started. I contacted. Our main goal was to find someone.
Can you name the providers that you evaluated?
We talked to Fern, we talked to Stainless, we looked also at the open source, and we talked to Speakeasy.
What was the open source one? Like the open source?
No, I start playing. It was irrelevant though, because it's like it wasn't open source with the company behind. It was this mayhem of generating. Yes, it was irrelevant. We were looking for someone to be a design part, like someone super responsive that does a really, really good job, that are really into making the best APIs possible, that was really, really critical for us. We start talking. Stainless were very distant. Fern the pricing went really high, really fast. Quite before we felt that they give enough back in the term functionality. And then we land on Speakeasy, that were like doing the whole process really, really well to this day. So the CEO went to talk to me on the first sales call. We talked. After 2 days, they gave us an example with our, by the way, horrifying OpenAPI. And it's really funny. And if someone is listening that is trying to do it, if you don't dogfood something you make, it never works. So when you do an OpenAPI only for the sake of some users to use it, and you don't have 5 billion users, they're going to tell you what's the problem with it. It's just never good. And the beauty with an SDK is that you can dogfood it. So what we did, we start by fixing the basic of the OpenAPI, and then we created the SDK, and we switched all of our end-to-end tests to use our SDK. And
So
2 months
basically,
later,
okay. Mm-hmm.
yes, sir.
So what I wanted to ask is like basically what we had before, we sort of maintained the open API that we had like previously. We had the TypeScript SDK that we generated or we
No,
maintained.
not generated. We wrote.
So we
So
wrote and
we
maintained.
wrote the Go, or
Mm-hmm.
us or the community wrote the Go, wrote the TypeScript.
Mm-hmm.
We had some kind of open API automation that was basically for documentation,
Mm-hmm.
but the loop was never closed.
So,
So
but
if the open
what was used under the hood, for example, to power Novu? Like what SDK or what logic?
nothing, just like you just made API calls in the Novu testing.
Okay.
So that means none of them. It wasn't a closed loop.
Mm-hmm.
If the open API wasn't good, it doesn't matter because
Mm-hmm.
we are good in our testing, but the open API says nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's only the open API was care about whoever cared about the documentation,
Mm-hmm.
DevRels, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no this closed loop that means you are doing something good.
Mm-hmm.
It was all manually maintained separately, which means nothing was maintained good. Because the chance for a human to maintain that much sources of information and keep them up to date,
Yeah.
in my opinion, is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Or like it's like a sweatshop. I don't know. It makes me itch. Basically. So what we did is we took TypeScript. We said we're
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah. So
I
TypeScript
started
was the
straight.
first kind of POC kind of.
That's what we know. Like I can
Okay.
look at TypeScript and read it, unlike Python, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
Or Go. I can say that looks good, that doesn't look good, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So Speakeasy has like a really cool CLI that allows you. They check your open API.
Mm-hmm.
I can I can do like a short demo.
Yeah. So let me share your screen.
Cool, share it.
Yeah.
Where is our TypeScript? Here, no TypeScript. So let me. I'll just. 1 second. I'll just pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No types. Sorry. So just for the sake of it to see how it looks.
Mm-hmm.
So they have.
Can you make it slightly bigger?
Yes. You define basically where is your SDK, and then you just run their CLI. What they do, they remote generate your files and then drop them back, but you don't notice. So you just run Speakeasy. It looks at your OpenAPI file. It links it. It tells you what's the problems, and it's like really. Well, I have actually a better idea. Let's show you. We'll show it with their studio.
Mm-hmm.
They did something that is very cohesive. It works really well together.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to generate. It goes to our prod endpoint for OpenAPI.
Mm-hmm.
It brings it. It generates, and eventually it's going to also load the studio and give me AI generated tips how to make it better. They have a concept of overlays that you can fix the OpenAPI outside of your server, like rename methods and so forth to make it as idiomatic as possible. And what they do eventually, here, so you can see our OpenAPI, you can see the README they are generating, they show our OpenAPI. Here, they found
all this is AI generated, all the README section and...
No, I think all of the generation is not AI at all. The whole point is for this to be consistent every time. Okay, what's API assisted is they have suggestions. Okay, like I put here subscribers, I call it retrieve. Say, look, maybe subscriber get is going to be better. I put preferences with capital P, said that's not good. Let's do preferences with the lowercase
so basically
p.
maintained a consistent
the idiomatic
typing.
Idiomatic approach.
Like,
this is not as good as it should be, and it will give me different suggestions for different languages. Okay, because each language has its own, like some languages has a camel case, some they have snake case,
Yeah.
and so forth. So the minute I approve it, they actually create an overlay
Mm-hmm.
in my you can see like the level of documentation you get is out of this world, really.
Right.
How to use it, and it's for each language. Like really so nice. How to do server selection. Like really, you don't get that level of information and documentation like when outside of them or when you try to do it yourself. And literally,
Mm-hmm.
I literally do nothing. You know, all I do is I have a good open API, which is not to be taken lightly. It's hard to get
Mm-hmm.
a good open API, but this is perfect. You see the CLI is connected, so
Yeah.
I can fix it and I can rerun in their website, and it actually runs on my computer.
So
It makes it run again.
it's like a
It opens the
studio
socket.
that is previewing the actual auto-generated SDKs that like the output of the
It
auto-generated
is
SDK.
generated on my computer. Yes,
Mm.
it's generated on
Okay.
my computer. Look, they gave me, as you can see, they gave me something wrong as a suggestion,
Mm-hmm.
and now I can also fix it. Just for the sake of showing what happened here now. Okay, I have sources. Where is it? What they just did. I see all the changes here on my computer. I think it's very critical,
Mm-hmm.
okay, to know exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no magic. You can see exactly the work with Zod to validate and transform to directions, which I really, really love.
This is
Um,
like mainly for the TypeScript SDK, right? Like for
no, it's
typesetting
for
and
all of them. It's for all of
okay.
them.
Oh, okay.
They do it for Go, everything. That's for everything. Um, that's for everything. The beauty is that you are opening your own repo in your own organization for each.
Mm-hmm.
They take some credentials to access and help you, but
Mm-hmm.
everything is ours. Like nothing is theirs. We have a
Mm-hmm.
Novu TS. We have our releases. It's in our NPM repository.
Mm-hmm.
There is actions for generate and publish. Generate
Mm-hmm.
looks at the current state, goes to the OpenAPI in production,
Mm-hmm.
tries to generate, if there is changes, it opens a PR that we approve,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's published, and that's it.
And
And it flows really, really well.
when there is a change that's supposed to be introduced, like in another SDK or maybe even in the TypeScript SDK, and you said that it generates the PR,
Yes, I can
I
show it
guess
here.
the PR is reviewed by our team or by
Yes,
who?
by
Okay.
whoever owns the repository, but by our team, it tells you what changes have been made, that the
Mm-hmm.
test has been deleted. They show that we did a breaking change, so they're bumping the version accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
Semantic versioning, what changes, everything is so precise, exactly on what they found that was changed.
And
Here
what
you have a lint
about
report, and
SDKs? What
yes.
about SDKs that you are not, or languages that you are not proficient enough in?
So
Like
that's the
how
reason
you
we did
handle that?
work. We did all the work on or most of the work on TypeScript,
Mm-hmm.
because if you don't know, you need to trust.
Yeah.
So this is what we do. We trust.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we try to take people that we know that know Python and stuff to take a look, and it's so
Mm-hmm.
far going good. The only thing which is important to state is that there is element of hooks, which is
Mm-hmm.
like points in the flow of a code that you can interject. This is the code, and it's code in the native language of the SDK.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need hooks in TypeScript, you also need to find some way to write them in Python. Good thing there is ChatGPT,
Mm-hmm.
and in Go and in PHP, and this took a little bit more effort.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you are writing very small pieces of, single amount lines of code.
Mm-hmm.
But this you're going to have to figure out. The moment, I think they should provide it as a service, even a paid service to companies. At the moment, it's not there yet.
To what?
But
To generate hooks?
like to translate your hooks, yes. Like
Okay.
because I think that's the main, that's the core value of the service, is the ability to allow you to provide services in languages you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we were okay. There is ChatGPT today. We did some work, and we are done with most besides PHP, and PHP will be done really soon as well. So these are Python one. They help you with all the what you need to generate and to push it.
Mm-hmm.
And you here in idiomatic, what we saw before in TypeScript, idiomatic Python with very similar documentation, with all the important notes when it comes to Python.
Now, can you also share your screen to show how users are interacting with the SDKs or the endpoints, like with the, I think it's called live API preview or something like that from the documentation from Mintlify? Because if I'm not mistaken, the documentation is also being fed.
Yes, the same examples.
Okay.
I'm not sure it's been merged yet, but let me 1 second. I'm just not sure the new examples have been merged because we are publishing this in a few days. But anyhow, it for sure exists. API docs, right? Is this one?
No. It should be actually the first one with the API reference.
The docs.
Yeah.
The docs, pull requests.
Here. Yeah, okay. This one.
Not linear. I don't see now it should have like a preview. 1 second. My headphone died. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Cool. Move to use auto-generated. Let's hope you can have here a preview.
We have the view deployment. You see here in the staging.
Thank you. Use view deployment. Good. So if we look at view deployment now.
Why we have two of those?
At this point. Again, it's not, this is in PR yet.
Can you make it bigger, the window?
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Why it's not responding? Okay, all good. So now you can see Go SDK, PHP SDK. There is some stuff to fix here. All of those are fed, and that's a value proposition from Speakeasy. Speakeasy does something really cool. It actually takes our OpenAPI and it saves it in their own repository. Then they're generating in each one of the SDKs examples, and then they build a single file, and I'll show it here. You see docs. They build a single file, this one, which contains all the OpenAPI and all the examples. Go here. It's called Xcode examples, you see? And it just like creates one huge OpenAPI file with all the examples that they generated.
And then they're feeding, in our case, Mintlify.
And then Mintlify is fed with a single line of code. Say, hey, Mintlify, here is our API reference. And you reference them to Speakeasy. Then go to Speakeasy, pick up our reference. Now, Speakeasy, every time we make any change in any SDK, this file gets updated. And it's always the same file.
Yeah.
So we have a completely aligned, auto-generated, fresh state of our APIs in our documentations.
Yeah, that's really neat.
It's a very, very strong.
So I have a few more questions. The first question that I have is going back, kind of like, for example, if you were to join Novu at much earlier stage, and you would need to at least prepare the infrastructure for the API endpoints that essentially like one of the premises of what Novu offers is kind of one API to communicate with, to communicate with all the notification providers, sending all the messages, like everything with one unified API, which is Novu API. So with this premise in mind, it's like essential to have a very good API experience when Novu users are interacting with the API. So how would you approach this if, for example, you were here from the start and, for example, maybe other, let's say, some developers who are hearing this or watching this, and they are thinking about some similar kind of maybe SaaS approach with API focused kind of company or service? What should they pay attention to, or how should they prepare the infrastructure to really serve a very high quality API to their users?
I'll go step backwards.
Okay.
High quality API means high quality open API.
Okay.
And you want to make it as easy as possible to create a high quality API. And the way we do it is not ideal.
Mm-hmm.
And the choice was made here was to use NestJS. It's a very progressive framework, but it's not fun to use with OpenAPI.
Mm-hmm.
Like the amount
why is that?
Because it's like TypeScript but JavaScript, so you need to, like, everything you write in TypeScript, you need to write in additional decorators on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
In the previous company, we used something much more lightweight and used the library called SOA, which was miles better.
How does it called?
TSOA. It's like much more lightweight, much easier to implement, and it's really the whole OpenAPI concept is super strongly integrated in it. And you don't like you can use the decorators, but you use them much less. Use mostly JSDoc, which survives the TypeScript to JavaScript compilation, and this I believe it's going to be a much easier life. Like there is much more place for mistake. You need much more linting to not make mistakes when it comes to OpenAPI with NestJS. Like you can make mistakes, and they compile and everything is good.
And like if you are using, for example, SOA for maintaining your OpenAPI standard.
So you don't know. It's just like it looks at your TypeScript documents, and it translates the TypeScript to OpenAPI. Like if you have a number, like it allows you also to say, hey, this number is an int. It allows you to make adjustments. But if you don't say anything with NestJS, you put a number, it says it's an object.
Okay. So you need to define everything.
The difference is SOA is generating the document on compile time, and NestJS generate the document on runtime.
Okay.
So on runtime, there is no TypeScript. There is only JavaScript. There is like This is how.
So the SOA is just getting it earlier before
from the actual TypeScript. So when you do return on a function, you don't need to say, hey, here is a decorator, this function returns that. No, it just the function returns that. So of course it returns that. Like, so I found it much more it was much more intuitive than the NestJS, and we are heavily invested in NestJS. So that was a challenge, and there was a lot of mistakes which were very innocent mistakes that were very painful when I started testing the SDK. We put it record, but we put number, and then the enum we decide it's a number because again it's like you say like how could this be? But it's because in runtime you have no types. There is nothing. It cannot infer anything when it comes to TypeScript and Nest. So this is one. Now, if my recommendation to every team all over is to always generate your SDKs. It doesn't have to be paid. there is ways to do it. The first time I paid to generate SDKs here, and I think it's awesome. I think if it's a part of your premise and what the company is trying to sell, then go ahead and pay someone to do it good.
Yeah.
Again, paying someone doesn't mean you don't do anything. It just means like what we just showed, that you can have like a much broader reach with a much more idiomatic code. But until now, I used to generate it for free.
Yeah.
Because there is a reasonable generators, they bring you to the 85% that can generate, and then you can always have, let's say, the 85% of the value.
Yeah.
In your language, your front end is using SDK to talk to the backend. There is only one set of objects. Actually, there is two. You have your real set of objects and a generated set of objects for the front end, and everything can flow really nicely.
And
Yeah.
in terms of like when you evaluated the providers of the the providers for the auto-generated SDKs, you kind of went through it, like I said, the conditions in a way, one by one. But in general sense, what would you, again, if you will kind of go back to the first stages of trying and implement this, how would you approach this? Would you approach this any differently?
No, I think we did quite a good job there. And I think they came out on top really strong. Like we had like problems that we wanted solved. Like we made a list of those problems. We wanted retries that is working well. We wanted this idea, idempotency keys to be implemented. We wanted pagination. We're looking at like the more advanced features you don't get from the open source ones, the free ones. The free ones, and we didn't know anything else. And I think they just showed up how, by the way, till this day, the support of Speakeasy is phenomenal. We have we took their enterprise deal. We have a Slack channel. They have this really great ticketing automation. Till this day, I'm like, there is I think there is 25 people supporting us.
Okay.
Like there's not a single person talking to us. There is maybe not 12 people that are they're just jumping out with each one with his perspective specialization. When he discovered something close to his home. So just look what they do. Look at the pricing that it meets your needs, and make sure that it solves the problems you can to solve. And for us, Speakeasy just did all of them and continue to improve regularly.
Okay, let me see if I have any other questions.
What more can I tell while you think about questions? We did one more thing while you think about it, which I think it's important. It's actually, we separated the internal and public SDKs in order to avoid the chicken and egg problem. I think everyone is getting to it. That you need to deploy a new OpenAPI in order to get a new SDK, and then you have multiple PRs per business logic. So what we did is we actually incorporated in our NX, in our monorepo, an internal SDK that supports all of our methods and is generating within the development lifecycle. Actually, the same generator generates this public SDK and generates an internal SDK, including bearer auth, including they do a really cool generation of React hooks now. That are generated for all of our methods. So our full stack work can work the whole features within a single PR. You find your question?
So it's actually, no, I want to maybe slightly touch this particular point where I do remember that we kind of discussed this slightly a few days before, but you said that one of the biggest frustration for engineers or developers that are working on adding particular features, the fact that they need to work with the SDKs and kind of generate everything or build in the
So
development
in,
process. Yeah.
normal, in a normal life cycle, which does not look at the engineering,
Mm-hmm.
then you write code in backend, then you have an open API. So you need to write code, someone needs to approve it, right?
Right.
Because you need to push it into some production environment or something
Mm-hmm.
in order to generate a new SDK.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to use the SDK to create API testing and front-end testing, that means that instead of writing the whole feature, you need to write backend, approve it, get it in, get a new SDK version, come back to your work, bump your SDK version, bring the new models and changes, write front-end and API testing. And
So
then no,
basically, it's like few cycles.
and then you discover you made a mistake,
Mm.
and you do it again and again, and you can find yourself on a 6 cycle now PR, because like you always make mistakes because we're human,
Yeah.
and then it's becoming, and then people say, I don't want this SDK, let me just try it my own.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why this shit. So the minute you have an internal SDK, which is a part of the development lifecycle, you run a script and you have a new, and it's not external, it doesn't have to go to NPM.
Yeah.
Then you actually go like, hey, here I change my backend, one click. Hey, cool, now I have an SDK with 4 new models. I can go ahead, write my API test. Oh, that's not good. I need to change that with a question mark. No problem. Now this is updated. Now let's go to my front end. Oh, this naming is not good. I want as an object. No problem. Let's go back to the backend. And I told you with the NestJS, you make a lot of mistakes of that kind.
Mm-hmm.
Because you like forget one on a decorator. It makes an object instead of an any. And so all of this extremely painful stuff when the normal becomes like, okay, just press the button and continue.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you mean. Okay. So like just to close up, I guess I have one more question or one last question. Do you have anything that when you approach this challenge or approach kind of dealing with this, do you find anything surprising that kind of genuinely surprised you during the process of the implementation, or what you managed to get in the output?
I think I shared my frustration over an SGS with Swagger, and I think that kept surprising because I couldn't imagine, like, it's so complicated, like, to do a good job when it comes to TypeScript.
Mm-hmm.
And I was I was surprised how many times I did not get the response I thought I'm about to get.
Mm.
Like, and and we are just talking internally, regardless of the SDK, about how to start structuring guardrails within the code.
Mm-hmm.
Can take like saying, hey, you did not get the response you want. Because you go from the DAL layer, you say, give me something, and then you say, I think it's that. And then the whole thing is like typed, but I think it's that, I think it's that. You come out of the API with 14 extra endpoints, extra fields.
Mm-hmm.
The beauty with their SDK, because it's working with Zod, whatever is not per contract, exception.
Mm-hmm.
And that allowed me, and I'm feeling now extremely confident over our TypeScript API.
Yeah.
Because I saw that we are returning exactly what we promised.
Mm.
That was like a very good. Now when I was feeling extremely unconfident, and
Mm-hmm.
after dog fooding our SDK, I'm feeling extremely confident that we are returning what we are promising.
And
And
in
then,
terms of the defined output that, for example, the server actions that we are generating internally, how important is this to really try and define as much as possible all the possible returns or all the possible outputs for the.
there is no more slacking around. The minute you work with an SDK, you need to define how an error looks, or the
Mm-hmm.
error is going to be shitty in the SDK. Like if you want the error to be formatted in SDK in a nice way, you need to define it. And it really forced me to really define how our validation looks.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I worked deeply into defining it correctly,
Mm-hmm.
the SDK became beautifully to work with. Like the DX became like you get an error, and the error is error DTO, and there is a validation error DTO, and you know exactly that there is fields and how the map looks on this error.
Mm-hmm.
So it's what the only stuff you don't have to do with OpenAPI because there is no repercussions. When there is an SDK and you're trying to test a negative path,
Mm-hmm.
then it goes, hey, like it's giving you a weird response because you did not define that 404 goes to that type of error.
Mm-hmm.
It forces you to not, you cannot slack around. You cannot say like it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
I think that's very strong, and that's what you want to serve to customers. They need to know that
Beautiful.
you took that what you documented, they can trust that's what they're going to find out.
Mm-hmm.
And now when it's auto-documented, I can feel extremely confident about it. Because I did not write it. If I would write it, it would be wrong. But since computer wrote it, and it was dog-fooded, trying to
Mm-hmm.
eat, it's very high guarantee that everything is fine.
Yeah. So basically, the fact that we are internally using the auto-generated TypeScript SDK based on the OpenAPI that we have built, we can catch errors or mistakes right away. We can know that what the users might see or
No,
encounter.
we are getting hit by our mistakes
Yeah,
during the development cycle. So if that works for us, it's going to work for our customers.
got it. Now, okay, so now is the really last question is regarding um, the actual languages of the SDK. So right now, we are officially supporting TypeScript, Python, Go, and PHP.
Now PHP, we need to finalize now the support. Okay,
Okay.
PHP in beta
Mm-hmm.
the, with the Speakeasy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Python, Go, and TypeScript are fully supported. There are also general availability generators from Speakeasy.
Mm-hmm.
Now PHP, we're still tinkering around, and it's going to work as well. And
What are the other SDKs that we are going to
I, I
generate
don't
or officially support
I
after?
don't want to promise. I can tell you what Speakeasy offer for general availability. If I'm not mistaken, Java and C Sharp,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what they recommend to continue with.
Mm-hmm.
But at the moment, this is where we are going. At the moment, we wanted to go into the community to feel it, to come back, tell us what we did wrong,
Yeah.
do an iteration or two, make it better.
Mm-hmm.
And once we feel confident that this is working, the whole flow I just described, pull request, everything is well, to continue forward.
Amazing. All right. Gal, thank you so much for your time for
It was,
kind of going over all of this. It was amazing.
have a great
Thank you.
day. Bye bye. Take care.